as opposed to forget to do so. And I was telling Bruce that I thought some more people would show up since I sent the message to 112 people this morning.
Oh, wow.
So I guess I have to figure out how to make the message a bit more enticing because apparently it didn't work.
Well,
Um,
you might want to generate a short little story.
yeah, I can.
And
Just,
send
I'm
that.
gonna. I'm gonna
I'm about
start.
to send the your story about the threads up onto my knowledge management group because they have a similar metaphor
Hmm,
for what they're doing.
okay. So since all of you showed up, let let me share with you what I had on my mind this morning. The AI Exchange was set up with the intent of a collective group of people helping each other keep track of what's evolving in the AI space, though I think we're failing miserably at that because it's racing by and we don't cover much each day. Um, I think we're probably stuck in a rut. And I know that in a couple of sessions, there have been other people here from time to time. People have talked about things that they're wrestling with or working on or thinking about. And I was wondering if it might make more sense to turn this into a collective support group for anybody who wants to participate in a particular session and talk about what they're working on and do demonstrations, ask for comments, change the structure of Discord so that it's topic oriented as opposed to all of the things that we have in there now because uh, I'm already lost in the weeds. Um, and when the note goes out about the session that we had, hi Avi, it's another
Hi, hi, Gene.
50%.
How are you?
Pretty good. Yourself?
Good, thank you. Hi, Bruce. Hi, Ken.
Hello, Avi.
So when the post goes out about the session, we'll also include a note about here's what in this session we decided that we would talk about this in the next session so that there's an indication of something specific and to see if I made any sense. Ken or Bruce, would you like to tell Avi what I talked about in the last 5 minutes?
I'll give a shot at it, and we'll see
Okay,
what happens.
because
So,
sometimes I don't make any sense whatsoever.
yeah, I think you make some reasonable sense. I'm not sure about what the actual answer is, but this is not a bad stepwise solution. So Gene has been running this for a couple of months now, I guess, and is trying to generate enough interest to have a reasonable amount of people involved and interacting with the idea of the use of AI, and specifically, I'm guessing the use of AI in some storytelling and systems thinking. Um, and he's looking for a way of leveraging this, which has been a sort of a get together a couple of times a week without any specific topic other than AI-ish kinds of things. So he's suggesting that we actually select a topic to talk about next time and to put that out with the recordings when they come out so people have some idea of what they might find interesting when they show up the next time. Over.
Thank you.
and include the topic in the Discord server that Bruce set up after the workshop yesterday, so that if you talk about a particular topic during a session, people could continue to offer thoughts about that particular topic between sessions. So, want to try it?
Yeah,
Or should we continue the way we've been going?
that in general is the way that the well, some of the other discords that I'm involved in evolve, which is why I sort of started out with this structure. So there are specific topics that people can ask questions about or provide information about without it just being one long thread that becomes sort of difficult to find things using this mechanism. What we don't have in the other place is sort of an ongoing live discussion, and I think that will add value.
Any thoughts, Avi?
Yeah, maybe I don't have that background that you people have, but I've been playing with something. I think we talked earlier, we talked about Notebook LM, right? I think you were the one who got me introduced to that. I hope you can hear me.
Yep,
What
we can hear you fine.
Yeah. So what now Notebook LM does also is generate a mind map, right? I don't know whether you people have noticed that. And that mind map now able to copy that HTML from that mind map using a custom software and create a table from that. And I have my own software for visualization, which can then consume that. So because otherwise the mind map that generates that Notebook LM generates is basically a PNG one, right? And for a big book or something like that, it's very difficult to navigate. But once you're able to extract the HTML from that Notebook LM, a book or a YouTube video, whatever it is, then it becomes more manageable through a custom software. That is all I have to say. Have you heard of a book called Abundance, which has caused a lot of interest in California, especially? Do you even got involved? Because that book talks about the economic development in the US and then what are the challenges that the US faces. It's a fascinating thing. And I've got into Notebook LM, generated a mind map and extracted it in mind map and put it in a table format where I can consume it. Abundance.
Is that the book by Ezra Klein?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And there's
I
a lot
think I
of
heard about it, but I haven't looked into it at all. But
yeah.
so yeah, I the first time I exported the mind map, I found out that it was pretty much useless because it was whatever it was that I was looking at. You couldn't manipulate it once you exported it. And though the what what else can you do with it once you export it besides opening it and closing it? Because
No.
the
So
the
that's
way
right.
that the
Sorry,
way
go
that
ahead.
I see it in Notebook LM is you open the mind map to a certain point, and if you click on the node, it will take you back to the actual source in the content to read the description of why that node is there.
Right. So that is one part of this thing. Give me 1 second. Maybe I can, if you are okay, I can share my screen and share what I have looked at to that. Is it okay? Can I share my screen?
Yep, go ahead.
Give me 1 second, please. So, by the way, whenever anybody have time, I have a lot of spending time on developing this problem-solving software, which I think that Gene had a session with me with a 6-step methodology of solving complex problems. basically is initial analysis, cause and effect analysis. Third step is idea generation, decision analysis. It is at ideagens.com. Unintended analysis about unintended law of unintended consequences and implementation analysis. So that is a separate exercise, but let me try to show you. So this is the book, right? And it has multiple ways the same data can be visualized. And I like what I think the mind map does. So this, I think, let me expand a little bit. And if you are having problem, I can make the web browser at a bigger size. So this is the mind map from abundance. An export from notebook LM into a different table and then being consumed by this my software as such. But let me just let me shrink that. So this is the high level of that book abundance, beyond scarcity, society is not a pie, all those things that I think you can read it yourself. And then for each one of them, then one can go towards expanding at a different level. It is not as powerful as, let's say, Mind Manager, other mind mapping software which are custom made for mind map. But what I have done is basically, and it's my innovation to some extent, I was always concerned that if we can put data, because mind mapping software are typically have very high learning curve. At least that's what this happened to me. And then it struck me that why don't I enter, rather than numeric data, enter text data in an Excel and then have it have a software, custom software to consume that table, which obviously Excel is a table format, and generate a mind map on that. So this is what you see is basically a table in Google Sheet, which is getting consumed, and this is now displaying in this table format. I'll stop here. Any questions or comments?
Okay, so at this point, you have the mind map that was generated by Notebook LM, and if I want to find out why differences of beliefs and interests is actually on this mind map, I have to go back to Notebook LM to find out, right?
Yeah, you can go and search there, query the Notebook LM, and then you'll get all the details summarized by them.
Well, it's not a query, because if you expand this mind map in Notebook LM, all you have to do is click on that node and it will bring up the text out of your content that's responsible for that node.
To be honest, I haven't clicked on the node itself, and because I think it is a more of a PNG file that generates a Notebook LM. I don't think it's clickable there, but if you have experience, let me see if I can do that.
Well, the thing is, they never told anybody about that. Okay, I mean it's a secret.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. So this is how what happens. As you see, I export that into my software, and then I can copy the elements and then import into my software and do that. But let me go back to this thing. Let's go back to this. 1 second. Sorry for the confusion. Okay, so let's go back. Abundance. Where is abundance? Yeah,
there it is. Yeah.
Okay. So what you're saying that if I was to click on that mind map, right, and you say that, let me, okay, and you're saying that if I go here, okay, so yeah, okay, sorry, I haven't tried that, to be honest. So that's a good neat trick. He's able to pull it from there, and then on the bottom generating that.
Yeah, so it takes it a minute to go find it or create it, whatever it's doing. And a couple of weeks ago, as soon as you clicked on one of those nodes, it closed the mind map window. And I'm glad to see that they finally fixed it, so that you can now move around in the mind map
Mhm.
and click on some other node, and it will bring you up the other text.
Okay,
Um,
right. And then obviously you can copy the text or whatever it is, what text that you like, and then use it in Google Sheet or whatever, Google Doc,
but
whatever it is.
so I'm really pleased that you figured out a way to get the mind map
Mhm.
out of Notebook LM,
Right,
right, in a way that you can actually walk through it.
right. It's slightly easier that way, right? Because this one is a bit slightly difficult because really expand to large extent. And the only thing I would say in that sense is that so this is one way, but obviously I can make a Kanban board out of that. I can use the mind map. So what we saw earlier was a tree diagram, which I like, or we can also do a fishbone. You can see that, and when I go here, the decomposition of that goes on, right, in a fishbone manner. And I think people with quality control and other backgrounds would have a better understanding of the fishbone. So this is
You know,
how.
when Avi demonstrated this software to me, I got the impression that there were 25 people working on it for 10 years.
Oh, thank you very much.
It is extremely deep. I have forgotten how many times I got lost because there are just so many dimensions to it.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll let go and stop sharing. Thanks.
Well,
I
hi,
thought
Randall.
thought we were using
Hi.
AI to stop the confusion.
Well, sometimes you have to get in really deep to figure out what to get out of it, I guess. So, since you did so good last time, Bruce, you want to bring Randall up to speed?
I can give that a shot. So let's see. We started with Gene lamenting the few people that were here, which at that point was mostly me and then Ken.
Mhm.
Especially since he sent out a notification that we are doing these sessions with the to the people that were at the workshop. Uh, so I was wondering if the changing the format a little bit would make it more attractive to to people, which would be basically picking a topic so they know ahead of time what we might be talking about. And I'm only I'm the only thing I'm thinking is that there's some value in just sort of open time also. So we might want to just take that as as an amount of time to uh might want I'm sorry about that might want to be able to have a little time to also just discuss things in general that are going on. But there will be a focused topic so that people will have some idea of what they're coming to, uh, and that information would go out with the session information from the previous session. So people to have that go, and then following that, Avi offered a demo of a path from Notebook LM, outputting a mind map from there into some software that does a deeper dive beyond that, which I think everybody here saw at least the end of that presentation.
Mhm.
Over.
So the additional part of that is based upon the workshop that was done yesterday. Bruce set up a Discord server for members of that workshop to continue to talk about stuff that they seem to engage with quite intently in the workshop. And when I spent some time in it earlier today, it looked like maybe it made sense to turn the Tuesday and Thursday sessions into a support group for whoever it was that wanted to show up and talk about something that they're working on to get thoughts and ideas from other people. Um, and establish topic segments in the Discord server so that we could continue to provide thoughts and other people could provide thoughts between the sessions, which is a thought, which I've never wedded much of to anything except my wife for 58 years now. So
So I'm gathering you're contemplating how to make this more of a sort of a community and more of an expansive thing.
yes, the thought being that it doesn't seem to be addressing the initial intent to any great degree.
And what was the initial intent?
The initial intent was I cried uncle because I can't keep up with what's going on in the AI arena. And I thought that we could have sessions and people would come and talk about in specific what they were doing with AI to give other people thoughts about what they could use it for.
Yeah. And are you feeling more confused or less?
Oh, I'm always confused. Okay. I on May 27th, I ran into Recall and became immediately addicted and also tremendously upset when I found out it's been available for a year. I could have been addicted a year ago.
So it doesn't sound like the confusion to me that's trying to be addressed, but the fact that there's an overwhelming amount of information that you So
well, yeah, I can offer that. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. You know, we're talking about AI and just trying to get a handle on it. You know, some people work on it all their lives and, you know, they're just immersed in it every day. And that's not even like necessarily using it. It's like there's the people who produce these things, and then there's people who use them or consume them. And it's really hard to make sense of it. You know, I think one thing that I've learned is that it helps. I mean, it's helped me to kind of try to dig into the details and understand some of the basics. Because once you understand the sort of the basics of like how the sausage is made, you realize that there aren't that many ingredients. And what, you know, all the diversity we see is just sort of permutations of those ingredients. That said, there's a lot to the ingredients. Yeah. But it's sort of like it depends, you know, your understanding of them depends on how you chunk them together. And this feeds back to how does the brain work, right? So like, why does this stuff even work at all? I mean, it's so because it goes back to like how we perceive things. And that's, you know, that's, I think, part of the reason why we get so wound up with it, because, you know, there's self-referentiality going on here. Yeah, a lot going on. But getting back to communities, you know, thinking about communities, social, you know, I think there's a great value in social learning. I mean, if you want to learn fast, get a group of people together, right? And I think that's what you're doing. And are there good ways for groups of people to, you know, to get together and learn, you know, learn fast? Well, there are strategies, you know, divide and conquer, right? but that depends on sort of the relationships of everybody, sort of taking a role. And there's another strategy of like the star strategy. You bring in, and I've done this, with a couple of groups. We bring in experts, and have a little bit of a drumbeat. So once a month or twice a month, you have somebody come speak on a specific topic. That helps. That can bring people together I think in a very cohesive way. But it's a bit challenging to set those things up because you got to beat the bushes and find people who are willing to speak and ready to speak, have something interesting to say. And then you have to structure it, part dialogue, part presentation. That's a little bit of an art form, I think.
So,
And then I've also done, and I'll finish this and then I'll stop. I've also done sessions like this where it's just kind of a bull session. But what we did, which I thought was helpful, was we tried to create collectively a big bibliography. These are the kind of the key references in the field, right? And that was a really good learning process for everybody. Because everybody would come up with something different, and they'd have different reasons for why, they thought their selections were, the most useful ones. And that dialogue was a really good way of sort of leveraging the brains in the room with the brains outside of the room, which is kind of the challenge if you think about it. It's like all of that stuff that's out in the world floating around, which is foamy and maybe not all delicious, but some of it is. How do you access that and sort of begin to narrow it down? So think funnel, create an omnidirectional funnel to suck in all that information and process it. That sounds like fun.
Well, the last time I participated in one of those undertakings, it seemed like everyone wanted to have something that they recommended on the list.
Mm-hmm.
And the lengths that they would go to justify to get their reference on the list was unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the group, the majority of the group was so timid that they wouldn't tell them they were full of shit to go away. Yeah. So the list just got longer. So it wasn't useful because it wasn't a short, concise list to say, if you're starting out, here are the best things to read. And if you looked at all of those, here are the next things that you ought to pay attention to. Yeah. Maybe 5 of these and 5 of these. And if you've been at it for a long time, here's 5 that might be something new. I don't know. But
yeah. Well,
but the
group dynamics, I mean, the specific people in the room can have a huge effect on that. I mean, if you, and also the size of the group. I mean, I think for me, it's worked with, maybe 4 or 5 people. Once you get beyond that, it gets a little unwieldy.
Mm-hmm.
But then the question is, well, what do you do with that information? I could see, and I don't know if it's me, but it tends to be, I mean, what I've experienced, often it ends up being like a small group of people, 4 or 5, occasionally maybe 6 or 7. And those core folks kind of drive the direction of the group. And also the output. But it's important to have sort of a goal. I think a goal can help bring bring folks together and expressing that and keeping it alive and keeping people, nudging people to stay focused. That's a little bit of a art form.
And are there any projects more important to you than the ones you're working on?
That's the thing. It's like everybody brings their own stuff to the group, and if it's not working, they don't show up.
Right. So, which is why my thought was not to find something for the group to work on, or rather for the participants to offer perspectives to whomever it was that was talking about what it was that they were working on in that particular session.
Yeah. Well, that's I think the advantage of having somebody present something. It's like, okay, you're interested in this topic. Take that, run with it. Come back in 3, 5, 6 weeks and tell us all about it. And
I'm not laughing at you, Randall.
So what the dynamic of that is, people have a purpose, and then they come back, and that feeds more into the purpose of the group.
What I was laughing at, Randall, is I have 5 to 10 new interests every day.
Oh, okay? I hear you.
So you were talking about coming back in several weeks, okay? I mean, I have to go look to see what I captured yesterday to remember what it was that I was interested in yesterday.
Yeah.
The article or the story I published this morning, I have no idea where that came from. And it just sort of fell out. And when I looked at the answer, I said, shit, really? And why are trade deficits a good thing?
Well, you've been reading the MMT stuff. There's a good reason for that.
Though only if you do the other half of the puzzle. You should never spend time making anything that you can buy for less than what it costs you to make it. And what that means is that you then have to take the time that you saved and upscale whatever it is that you're doing so it's valuable to somebody else. And we're buying lots of stuff, creating a trade imbalance, but we're not upscaling to the extent that we should be to create stuff that's valuable to the rest of the world. That's why everybody's leaving, because it's too expensive to build here, to manufacture here. The Chinese say we live in interesting times. You've been awful quiet, Ken.
No, I'm listening. It's all good stuff. I join in lots of different groups. So it's a bit like Randall was just mentioning, some are very successful because they have a certain goal. And they've kind of built some momentum, and they've got a core group that will, regardless of the content, will always be there. That always kind of helps. I think it's nice if you've got a good solid attendee list of the hardcore, and if it's more than sort of several, like 15 or whatever, but as people come together every week, they invest in it over a long period of time, and there's several different groups, right? Lots of different groups, and some form and some dissolve, and then other forms, and they can keep going. And some I've been in for quite a few years now, and they've been consistent. But they ask in speakers and other people to come in to give their perspectives from an expert view. Some of them are topic based, like whatever it may be, strategy or whatever, systems thinking or whatever it is. They've got a definite theme to what they're trying to trying to approach that, which helps bind people together on a recurring basis. And they're very consistent, a bit like what you're doing in terms of like, a very fixed recurring pattern that is easy to jump in on. So you always know that they're going to be there on a Tuesday or like this now on Thursday for me in the evening. So and I think those are the kind of there's a lot of a bit like Randall mentioned about the sausage factory with the ingredients. There's a normally a fixed set of ingredients that we could manipulate to produce something. There's no secret to it, but you've just got to just get those variables right. But you're having a theme, I think, around something that you want to achieve with some definite outputs is kind of good. If you're sort of goal driven, then that can be quite a theme based. I'm waffling a bit now, so I'll shut up.
No, I don't. So some of the groups that you belong to are working well and some are not. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah, and some spring up and
Uh,
die. Of course, they spring up with a good intent, but they lose energy over time for whatever reasons. They can't get the recipe right.
I've
Um,
done at least a half a dozen of those.
yeah,
Okay. And I guess I haven't figured out how to get the recipe right. And the recipe doesn't have to be mine. Okay? In other words, I'm open enough to say I'm interested in a good recipe. I don't have to be the cook,
yeah.
all right, or the chef, or whatever you want. And the only thing I did was to establish a time frame. Though I would like to spend my time in those time frames and feel like the people that were participating actually found the time spent meaningful. Well, if the time isn't meaningful, they won't show up. Okay? Well, yeah, I do. Um,
Well, I think you run. Yeah, I mean, I'm here, right? So I don't give come away that easily either these days. So so I mean, you've got a regular cadence going, which is really great, right? So I know on those 2 dates I can't make the Tuesdays, but the Thursdays 11 o'clock in the evening now, right? 11:30 for me now in the UK, and sometimes I can make them, and sometimes I can't. But you've got a regular cadence, and you send out great newsletters. I think your newsletters are excellent, right? The way and you record these videos on YouTube. So you've got a lot of good things going on. It's just a case I think maybe there's a few things perhaps like Randall's suggestion or there's probably a few things we could consider run some experiments to get this group going. I think you mentioned it at the start as having some sort of theme based or topic based theme. I mean, it's kind of AI is the kind of thing you've kind of established. It's kind of an AI for me initially, an AI type of perspective on AI. Um, that's already a good, relevant, interesting topic for most people, I would say. So just have to perhaps experiment around that theme a bit. And if you mentioned, like you said, you could either invite some speakers in sometimes to give their views. I think Abby was just demonstrating some software he's trying to do with AI. You could put these up front. Someone's going to demo this, or someone's going to do that, or someone's going to speak about this, or and there's you get a content that you can probably share out of it every week, which may become a bit more something to hang your hat on every week. You've already got your newsletter, which is good, but I'll shut up now. So anybody else?
So AI is pretty general. It covers a lot of space. I think a lot of the discussions we've had here are more associated with how we can apply it with sort of a general set of thinking patterns, which makes
Yeah,
it a little bit more specific than everything in general, I think.
I think
So there may also be some other ways that we could find groups to reach out to.
So on that note, you could make it you could combine the words with AI and systems thinking or something like that, right? Sort of an AI system. It's a bit more like in thinking patterns. If you want to be a bit more specific on it, you could just get two popular words like that and put them together and say, every week we're going to discuss AI relevant to systems thinking as a discipline or something like that. Or you could just but you could spin a few ideas around that, like that type of thing that you just mentioned there, Bruce.
Yeah, DIKW might have been easier for some of us to figure out.
Hmm.
That's okay. Bruce actually asked me the other day what it meant, which was marvelous because do you know what it means, Ken?
Uh, I looked it up at once at the start, but I can't remember now what it was. No, I can't. No, I can't recall it.
It becomes
Data,
obvious.
information, knowledge, and wisdom backwards.
Oh, that was it. It was something like this. Yeah.
And it rolls off as wicked. I mean, it's close. I don't know.
Yeah, so
It's good enough as any. I think Gene. It's catchy.
you can hang that on systems thinking, I think. I believe.
So I think what I'm picking up here is there seems to be kind of a struggle of what is this and how do you make it better? And so, and by making it better, it's like, yeah, making it grow. Well, what do you mean by growth is sort of a question. But let me offer a touch point for thought, and that's the growth of a city. So cities in Europe started out as an intersection of a road, and somebody built the church. And then people came and people came and people came, and they start to accumulate. Well, many growth processes are like that. There's some sort of spirit or incantation that draws all these beings together. So look at what we've got today. There's 5 people. How do you frame this? Just as it's a marketplace of ideas, right? That's one of the success factors for a successful village is, does a marketplace appear? That's another, I mean, it reinforces sort of the existing draw, brings people back more and more. So it's like, how do you expand that exposure surface, right? And that's
I would.
that's it. So it's a story. Like it kind of boils down to like, how do you tell that story, and what how do you, and also sort of how do you substantiate it, right? And so within there, maybe there's some kind of a tacit agreement that, or a tacit expectation that people show up. I don't know. I'm just talking.
Yeah, so,
Well, that's okay. And as you were talking, I was thinking that most of what you were talking about was development rather than growth.
Hmm.
Reminds me of the phrase that someone told me that almost all cemeteries grow every year, but they don't develop. So that the growth is not the objective, but development is.
Mm-hmm.
So a group of 5 people doesn't have to grow, though it should develop.
Mm-hmm.
It should evolve, as opposed to having the very similar groups every time it meets.
Mm-hmm.
in a way that creates value for the participants. Because if it doesn't create value for the participants, they stop showing up.
Well, what's the glue? And going back to the metaphor or analogy of the city, it's some sort of I don't want to use the word spiritual thing, but that's what it is. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have a different view of that,
Yeah.
Randall.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think the thing that binds societies or things together are the problems that they need to solve together.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the fabric that binds us together are the kind of common needs that we need each other for. So for me, problematic problems are the glue.
I see. I hear you. The spirit of problem solving. I mean, that's something that
It's a mutual progress through
yeah.
problems. I think that's the kind of way I'd frame it. Going back to Gene's thing about growth or whatever, but you need to develop, so you progress, and there's a common need. There's something where you have to. That's the glue. They can divide us or unite us, but and maybe both. Many people are the same. One of those things at the same time, but generally that's. If I look at society or even organizations, if there's no need for them to be connected, then they don't. And I think over time, like in game theory or extended game, repeated games, that becomes that strengthens the kind of collaboration. If it's a repeated game, if there's repeated problems that you have to continuously overcome together, then that cements the binding.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I think about it. So that's people are drawn towards they've got some sort of need, and they need that to be. So that's the glue for me, Randall. That's the way I see it.
I hear that, and it seems to me that that's kind of what's happened here. Is like we're all here because we've got a kind of problem to solve, and what that problem is just to maybe not put too many words on it, is trying to make sense of this thing called AI. It's a big furball, right?
Mm.
And that so in the spirit of problem solving, all kinds of conversations can transpire because it is a big furball and we're all kind of latching onto it in our own ways. So have fun with it, right? That's another sort of spiritual dimension is, well, if it's all like serious, that's not, I mean, being serious is important. I mean, if it was all being like how to make jokes with AI, or which, by the way, is really a fascinating subject.
Jim
you would get a different audience, right?
Yeah.
Jim and I like the phrase AI is a big furball. Mm-hmm. And at the end of what it told me, it said, well, what aspects of this furball are you most curious about?
Well, that's kind of a sense of humor, doesn't it?
I can't keep my hands off of it. I mean, it's like it's a disease. It's like drugs.
It's addictive.
Is it like replacing human relationships, though, Gene, in that respect? Then, because it can suck people into it, right? So it's like an entertainment, in terms of an entertainment system or whatever you want to describe it. It's is that I hate to say dangers of it, but
that's why you're here.
Am I here though? No, yeah. Is it me? No, but seriously though, it can suck people into it, right? That's the whole thing.
Well, my favorite sayings. Imagine being able to have a conversation with the smartest person you will ever meet, who has the patience of a saint, never becomes defensive, um, and never gets tired of your stupid questions, and sometimes makes mistakes. I'll take it. As
So
opposed
last,
to as opposed to people that post on social groups just because they want to see something that they posted and see if anybody will respond.
Ultimately, though, uh, so this this line of conversation leads me to start to in my perspective looks at like I start to think about the problematic situations this might encourage, right? So if you take it to an extreme in terms of like people get used to that kind of response from a system which is very um, maybe not confrontational or in any way, right? There's no pushback from it in that respect, right? So, but over time, if we do that, would we lose our ability to be able to handle all that diverse uh, opinion, which isn't aligned with our own thinking? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going on, but you know what I'm trying to say, right?
Well,
It's a dangerous,
don't,
it could be a dangerous path in terms of human development.
though don't we tend to discount anything contrary to what we currently believe?
I think perhaps that's the kind of one of the benefits of going down the avenue of like systems thinking is that you start to perhaps have a bit more of a empathy towards diverse perspectives that you think it's beneficial, right? To have diverse perspectives that don't agree with you because you see something you didn't you learn something that you didn't previously learn, right? From like, if you're starting to start to live in an echo chamber
Mhm.
of that kind of thing that feeds you what you want to hear, ultimately, like, then I don't know. It looks like a potentially interesting. I'll put it an interesting path of evolution. How we
Well,
evolved down that path will be a very interesting. It could be
this
lead
is
to an interesting outcome.
doesn't everyone have, or almost everyone have some level of insecurity? And if your held or tightly held firm beliefs are challenged, it actually tends to challenge your sense of self. And when someone disagrees with that, you can just accuse them of being defensive, and that will usually invoke a defensive. but
Uh,
but to get to a point where you can get up every morning and admit to yourself that everything I currently believe could be wrong, and take it from there.
yeah, I think you're right about how we get defense. I subscribe to that. Of course, we do, but I think it's learning how to deal with that is a very important in your personal development to be able to um, deal with that. So you're not seeing things with one lens. I think it's quite important, right? I think, um, and if you don't develop that capacity, perhaps not for maybe we're all at an age where we've kind of dealt with all this, and introduction of AI in our lives isn't going to be as the same as the introduction of AI into a younger person's at an early stage of development where they won't have the ability to have learned those skills over time and deal with conflict and diverse opinions and all the tensions that it gives with people with their own agencies. If you start to feed yourself off AI as your primary source of interaction, that could be a very interesting development.
Right. And as I say those things and think I firmly believe them, I still find from time to time I fall in the trap and I curse myself for doing it because I know better. Right? And I'll make a comment and somebody will, very forcefully disagree with me or give me evidence that it's absolutely wrong. And I still at times find it difficult to catch myself and think before I put my foot in my mouth. Yeah.
That's a very human. I don't think any of us on this. I doubt if any of us on this. We all have these triggers, Gene. I think things will. We all have these. These that happens to me all the time, Gene.
Let me make a comment, if you don't mind. From my perspective in problem solving, one of the things that I find very, very helpful looking at a problem is, first of all, identify all the stakeholders that can be influencing that problem. And why it is important to identify the stakeholders is because if you don't incorporate their perspective, then they become part of the problem. Secondly, what I find very useful is to document all the assumptions, going in assumptions, not only from my perspective, but from perspective of each of the stakeholder that we have identified, their current assumptions and their assumptions as they would be when the problem is solved. For example, if you're trying to implement some IT system, people have fears or whatever it is, and they think currently, but they assume that when the system is implemented, their life will be much simpler. Now, if it turns out that the life is made more complex or difficult because the system is poorly designed, then obviously there are serious problems with the whole thing, right? Just to give you that perspective from that situation. But I think documenting assumptions and belief and having somebody who's a well-fisher challenge you in that, to me, is one of the very fundamental way that we can be steered in the right direction. Whether we agree or not, that's a different thing. But having somebody just challenge you on a documented assumption, because a lot of these assumptions are on a subconscious level. So it's very, very important to make them explicit and document that. And that's why I use this table format and all those kind of things so that they become easier. It's just not text, but it's a table. And I find that, at least for my mental situation, looking at tables and cells of in the table itself, identifying as a separate element, much more useful. Thank you.
Yeah, Avi, I completely agree with everything you said. And it brings to mind a comment from Gregory House in a TV program. Everybody lies. So the question is, as you're attempting to ferret out all of the assumptions, how do you figure out when people are lying to you?
So let me, can you repeat that, just the last line, please, just to be
Well,
summarized?
as you're attempting to identify all of these assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
how do you ferret out and understand when people are lying to you?
So that's a great point. What I'm trying to say, no, so you don't actually go and query those persons, because I'm trying to solve the problem even without, I have identified them as a stakeholder, which we can do, which I think even AI helps us to do that, me do that. But I've also used AI, for example, for housing problem or something. What are the current assumptions that the people would have, and what are the likely assumptions they would have when the problem is solved? So we can use these kind of things because AI has all the internet as part of it, and it has that much intelligence to step in those shoes of those stakeholders, and from there ferret out the documented assumption that lying around the internet in some black hole of the internet and bring it to forth.
So if you attempt to tell me what my assumptions are, Am I not likely to become defensive?
So let me explain that. Sorry, I'll just take a minute. I'm sorry for taking time. But so we are not looking at as an individual as a stakeholder. We're looking as a class of stakeholders. So that's very important to understand. We're trying to solve problems. We're looking at senior management as a stakeholder, or the press as a stakeholder, the government or regulatory body as a stakeholder, not ABC as an individual as a stakeholder.
Ken, how do you feel about being lumped into a class?
Well, I think the class does share a common views about certain situations. Like if you were to, like they say, if you want to solve a chemical engineering problem, the worst thing in the world would bring all chemical engineers into this room, right? So the point is that you have to expand your universe of stakeholders when trying to even solve a chemical engineering problems. And the understanding of those stakeholders beyond the chemical engineers who have sat down the room, they need to get exposed to the universe that is impacted by the problem, which they only look at from the chemical engineering problem.
So, so Avi, is there a possibility that you are making an assumption that's not valid?
Absolutely, 100%. That's what I said. You first document the assumptions and then have people challenge you on that. So the two-step process. First of all, identify the stakeholders, make that class of the stakeholder as make an assumption regarding that, and then second step, which is a very crucial and critical one, is to have people challenge you that, and people don't have to be chemical engineers to challenge that, but any third party who's taken the interest say no. From my understanding, this does not look because you can't obviously query all the people in that class as such.
Okay, so can you respond to the question that I asked Ken about how you feel about being put in a class? I personally have no class, but you know, we can go from there.
I think we all have classes. We do belong.
No,
Yeah,
Avi, I want Ken to answer.
sorry.
I think we always people perceive us in classes all the time, don't they? I think that's I'm always labeled as something somewhere by somebody during some session. So often happens.
It's okay, Avi. I'm just trying to be a pain in the ass. Am I
No, it's
succeeding?
all good,
Am I
Gene.
succeeding?
Antagonist. Gene, is this helping you at all, though? Well, how do we help? Well, not help. Maybe it's not helping you. Maybe we're helping ourselves, right? But what do you want to? How do you want to, from the discussion going forward and the stuff that Randall's mentioned and Bruce and Avi? How do you want to? How do you think you might?
Let me just, sorry, can I just give me a minute? Sorry.
Okay,
So,
Avi.
yeah, so let me explain slightly about myself. I grew up in India in a very privileged background, but always been concerned about the poverty and the problem that I saw there. I'm today about 70 years old, and that passion for me has retained. And that's what I have done that. And I've sent my website in the chat. If somebody has group1.us, which has four of those sites that I'm working on currently. I've not gone to market because I've delayed till I get the whole portfolio done. But I can show you some of those sites, some of those specialist sites that I have, like forecast2cash.com or sapmodel.com, what they actually do. Because my whole passion is to be, if I may, with arrogance say that, be an expert at problem solving. For example, I will talk sapmodel.com, which is basically having a library of cross-functional process map. And all you you know what is important in a process map, these are foundational of any organization, process maps, whether we recognize them as such not. But what is more important, they're just not process map but cross-functional process map, because cross-functional process map have swim lanes both horizontal and vertical directions. They are bidirectional in nature. So when at the intersection of the horizontal and vertical, you have a group, you have a task on the horizontal side and groups of teams on the vertical axis. That intersection gives you who's doing what at what time and what are the touch points to the adjacent squares or blocks that you may say that. So that I find very, very fascinating. And I have identified about 40,000 of these process maps. And I think I've got about 1,000 have done them. They also obviously using AI use level 1, level 2, and level 3. So level 1 is a high level process map. And then for level 2, it breaks every level 1 to level 2. And at level 3, it breaks on every level 2 to level 3. So for example, you look at the example of annual operating plans of private equity firms, you could end up with about 80 to 100 individual process maps, which decomposes the process of, for example, making an annual operating plan for a corporate as such.
Avi, with your passion, is it likely that you will never be done?
Not really, because I am very, very close to finishing off. The only one that I'm finishing, also three of my sites, forecast2cash.com and sapmodel.com and ideagens.com, they are done. The only one that I'm working on last is GuruPlus.ai, which is basically a strategic analysis tool for businesses or for startup, which basically uses a 60 questions, which when the questions are asked as if it has the knowledge base of people like Michael Porter and Philip Kotler, management gurus. And then the knowledge base is an expert system is applied to those questions, and it gives you ratings of how it can improve. And hopefully next month, if we have a session, I can even demo you that and maybe give you access to look at how whether the system is doing what you feel valuable as such or not. So I'm pretty close to releasing them. But I want to do all four together because if I contact a corporate, I want to go with a portfolio so that hopefully they would see the breadth and the depth of it altogether, because one of the biggest thing in business is marketing. The most expensive thing is marketing, and you want to go to market where you can be able to touch multiple stakeholders in the business and provide them something that interests you that.
Gene, sorry, Gary, but I'm gonna have to go now, unfortunately, because with my daughters here with their friends. So
Okay.
I'm gonna have to head off. But Gene, I'll message you.
I'm going to have to go too shortly. So
thanks, guys. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry about this.
Nice
we'll,
meeting
we'll,
you.
Bye.
we'll work on your problem next meeting. And there won't be a meeting next week on Tuesday because I got to go to the doctor's. But next
Okay.
Thursday. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Ken.
Bye.
So have we addressed the problem?
I don't know. I've
So
I've
yes,
enjoyed today's session.
yeah, I think it's been interesting. There's what works for a group of 100 people doesn't necessarily work for a group of 4 or 5 or 6.
I don't think I would want a group of 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, however many it takes to have an engaging conversation about something. I mean, I got 4 articles queued up out of this meeting already.
Mm-hmm.
Probably none of them will happen, but they're started. So I thought it would be interesting to work on the thing that Bruce has been frustrated about in terms of Nkosi and their adoption of a systemic perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was just thinking that, the reason I'm here is a couple is that I met Gene at a systems thinking summit that I helped host a couple of years ago and have sort of followed along with Gene over time. because I hadn't had the background to understand fully how the softer systems fit into systems engineering. And I'm still not sure that it does, but that's a different problem. But I'm willing to accept that it doesn't, and that I need to leverage people who have those skills to bring into systems engineering. And I was just sitting here thinking that the way I end up in things like this is I end up in rooms of people that are a heck of a lot smarter than I am. But I'm very interested in a lot of things, so there's always something to learn. And I think that in some ways that's what Gene had sort of started to put together with this, was to find a way of gaining additional knowledge about the breadth of AI to be applied in the area that he's interested in. And I'm trying to apply AI in understanding better about the systems engineering thing, or this conflict. And I expect that if I asked Avi that same question, he would have an answer that had something more to do with business organizational. And I'm not sure about you yet, Randall, because you have a pretty broad perspective and fingers in a lot of places. So I'm not sure which one brought you here, right? And I'm just sort of wondering, who else is out looking to find ways of bringing AI into what they've done, or to make sense of AI in a problem they're trying to solve, and how to let them know that this is a place that conversation can happen, and they can try to get some feedback on how this might help them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think as far as what attracts me is I'm always trying to learn. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate the opportunity to cogitate with peers and interesting people. I'm okay with not having a goal. What I think I bring to a conversation like this is, maybe some insights on systems. Last time we talked a little bit about social engineering. We sort of bumped up against that topic, and I wanted to blurt out some words at some points about you're doing it or you're trying to do it, but you don't realize it. And it's being done to you. These AIs, they're addictive. That's social engineering. And how does that work? That's sort of an interesting topic to me.
Sure.
But the other sort of, I think the systemic thing, systems thinking, we've got a small group here, and what's happening is, there's four or five people, 5 squared, there's 25 different relationships. Right. And what comes out of each of those relationships is a froth of words, on different themes. And it's just all over the place.
Right.
If you get a larger group, it'll start to channel, right? And this is sort of the social learning thing, is this, it's a dynamic, right? That actually seems to play out in the world. And we don't necessarily want that all the time. If you get in a large organization, sometimes they just get entrenched, right? And that isn't necessarily good. And that's a problem. And one of those problems is, how do you get out of it? If you're if you find yourself in that situation, well, one is just use your 2 feet. Sometimes you can't.
So, I was talking to somebody the other day about getting into a rut in the organization where every Monday we had to go to the Monday meeting. Mm-hmm. And I found out that the best way to cure that problem was to declare success and decide that we didn't need to meet anymore. Done.
Yeah.
We've succeeded. Let's not meet anymore on Monday because we haven't talked about anything meaningful in the last 3-4 months.
Yeah.
So I put a note here about social engineering and systems thinking as 2 topics for the next session, and I'll put that in the notes when I send them out in terms of what we're going to talk about in the next session. Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
When I see I have a place to send that one, since I have those discussions in other groups.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. Yeah. Good speaking
Good to
to you
hear.
all again.
Okay. Good to hear
Likewise.
from you, Avi.
Thank
Everyone,
you,
take
guys.
care.
Take care,
Have a good
Avi. Thanks.
weekend.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate that.
Take care, Randall.
Take care. Good discussion.